Well, greetings everyone, and welcome once again to another Wednesday night promotion of the Sports Crib. A lot of things to talk about. Hey, the seasons are mixing over. We got NBA, we got baseball, we got uh, hockey. I mean, this is like it just seems that time of year. A lot of them we don't necessarily follow, but uh, I see Dave is here and Don is here. So, uh, any of you guys baseball? But well, Don, I know you're a big Houston fan. How are things starting out the year for you?
We're solid. Baseball is such a long season, and we're just like in the birth of it. But there's a lot of baseball to be played. But I like where Houston is right now. They're chomping at the bit.
Dave, it's been so long since our Pirates have been relevant. I don't, I mean,
Well, they started out nice with the season, and I think the big thing is when they brought back McCutcheon, because that turned off a lot of fans when Nutting let McCutcheon go a number of years ago to bring in prospects, and that did not pan out. But they brought him back, and he's 37 years old. But hey, he's very, very popular in Pittsburgh, and hey, right now they're holding their own, and like Don said, it's a long season, so we'll see where we're at around the All-Star break.
I'm almost ashamed to bring us in here. I see Bill there looking all dapper and the tie up. I mean, and the rest of us are just looking like regular old guys here. I mean, yeah, Bill, what's going on? How are things going for you at the start of baseball season?
It's been interesting just to note which teams. Well, one, I mean, the classic story in baseball is haves versus have-nots, and then the haves, have a whole bunch versus the haves, and then the have insanely versus the have-a-lots. Because it's not a salary cap sport. It is a different sport than our other major sports. It's different. I mean, basketball is not a hard cap either, but fewer teams are willing to go way over the cap in basketball, and you can't go over it in football. And hockey's economics are wildly different from all the other sports we just named. So everybody is pretty careful with their pennies and dollars in hockey. But in baseball, if you just decide, F it, you can spend as much money as you want. And we've seen teams do that, basically just say F it and spend all the money, just all of it. We want a pitching rotation with 3 Hall of Famers in it. We want to have an outfield with 2 Hall of Famers in it, and at least 2 Hall of Famers within our infield, and I don't know, 1 or 2 miscellaneous Hall of Famers somewhere around. Or these guys who have a shot at the Hall of Fame sprinkled somewhere else throughout the lineup. And you can do that in baseball. So it's fun when a team that isn't spending all the money gets out of the – now, we'll see if it's sustainable, but gets out quickly. Like, I kind of semi-predicted that the Orioles would have a really good season this year. One of the things that people have to say about Buck Showalter, who gets a lot of guff or whatever term you want to use, but he's really good at instilling culture and professionalism in young, not super talented teams, so that when they get better talent and get better players and things like that, there's a structure for them to operate within. So yeah, it's fun, like I said, when teams that aren't spending, gazillions get out of the box quickly and look good. We'll see how, like I said, we'll see how long. I'll just enjoy it while it lasts. And last but not least, I've been trying to see if I notice a noticeable difference with the clock and everything like that. And while it is certainly, I would say it's a slightly more enjoyable experience. It doesn't impose, like some of the other rules that I don't like so much that they changed. It doesn't impose so much on my consciousness the way that, there's a guy just going out to take a base, like without a hit or a walk or anything. Like, that still messes with me. I'm still a little weirded out by that. I don't know if I'll ever get used to that since this happened where I am in my life. And I can't imagine what it's like for you, James. But to spend, half a century plus getting used to one thing and then, this different other thing. Okay, one last thing. Tampa Bay. So I always say this, and I'll say it again. I don't think there's a better run franchise, maybe in sports, in terms of what they do with what they have, than the Tampa Bay Rays, formerly the Devil Rays. And they're carrying around their necks that horrendous, probably the worst home stadium in major sports, right? Has anyone here besides me been to the quote-unquote Trop? It's horrible. It's really, really, really bad. It's in a not very great location. It is a soulless environment. All of the sight lines are somehow somewhere between below average and terrible, seemingly no matter where you sit. And even if the crowd's really giving it their all, it's hard to make it loud in there for some reason, even though it's enclosed. It's got all the disadvantages of a dome, but none of the advantages. I've never seen anything like it. But despite all of that, the Tampa Bay Rays just chug along and either are very competitive or you can tell they're about to be very competitive despite all the constraints they have in terms of budget.
I tell you what, Bill, it would be great to combine Tampa Bay's organization with Pittsburgh's PNC Park, which is a beautiful park.
It is. It's one of the, and it harkens back. I'm not going to try to guess your age, David, but do you remember Shibe and all those other like old school parks?
Yeah, I'm 65. So.
Okay, so you do. Okay. So you remember the beautiful old parks of the 40s and 50s and into the 60s, and then the dark days of the late 60s into the 70s when everybody started to go to multi-use.
The cookie cutters, right?
Multi-use cookie cutter hideosities. Almost all of them, even in places where you could easily grow grass, for some reason for a while had AstroTurf, and it was just awful. And now I'm so happy to see people sort of go back to baseball-only stadiums with personality and class and style, though very small. Most the one thing I've noticed, they still, it's like, I don't know if the players are juiced, but the ballparks sure are. You don't see any more hitting the ball 460, and it's still being caught, which used to happen in the old days. But yes, like I said, always hats off to Tampa Bay. What they managed to get done with what they have to work with is amazing.
Mr. Scott, how are you this evening?
Oh, I'm very good. Thank you for sending an invitation. I was thinking of making a T-shirt like the old ball player. They hate me. He hate me. I was going to make a T-shirt like that. And I enjoyed listening to the great Bill Carroll in Tampa Bay, but I do have to ask kind of a retort to Bill about the great Tampa Bay, which he was spot on. Tampa Bay, what they've done, I mean, they've just embarrassed the Yankees, and their payroll is probably 10% of the Yankees. I mean, so I love it. But we have the great Rocco Baldelli that came from the Tampa organization, and the Twins. It's not seen that whatever it is he had there, it's not working here. I mean, it doesn't seem to be working. I don't know. Is it analytics? Is it? But had great hopes for
Rocco Baldelli. Analytics, because the most analytically driven team in all of baseball is the Tampa Bay Rays.
Well, it hasn't worked here. I mean,
I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that you like to hark on analytics. Literally, the most analytically driven of all the teams in baseball is Tampa Bay.
So that's why they win.
It's part of it because they don't have money. So they have to, you know what I mean? Like, they have to use the one advantage they have. Is they have the best. The people in their room, the people who run their analytics department are the best in baseball by far. That's how they make up for the lack of money.
Well, I know we're talking about baseball, but I'm going to just make one statement here, and I'm going to let you move on to the show. But one of my sons played AAU basketball. And when I would go to the basketball games, Flip Saunders was there with his son, and Kevin McHale was there with his son. And so we would just sit and just talk, and some guy came up and said, Golden State Warriors is the best team ever. Golden State Warriors is the best team ever. Now, Mikhail played on Boston with Bird. I mean, come on. And he says, no, you want to see a great team. I'm talking about Magic, Kareem, and Worthy. That's a great team, he told the guy. So analytics, maybe it has a place in modern, but knowing the game still has a place too.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with you, Anthony. But
analytics is knowing the game. It's just more information.
right. You know, I was going to say, Bill, the thing with analytics is that it's not a panacea. It's like the old computer term, garbage in, garbage out. And you have to have a good analytics team.
Of course.
Otherwise, you're going to be crunching data that doesn't mean anything.
Correct.
And that's where the knowledge of the game comes in, I think.
What you do when you're doing it right is you have things that you have found to be actually actionable information. So you separate the noise from the signal. You separate the wheat from the chaff. That's what separates people who actually know what they're doing when it comes to analytics from people who do not. So nothing's a panacea. Even money isn't a panacea. There's no panacea, right? We've seen teams spend all the money in the world and not win. So the only thing that helps you is to know, one, what actually matters, right? What matters? What things actually help you to put the best team on the field? The way that you get to that, one, is by doing longitudinal studies, right? By looking at the history of the game and figuring out how teams were constructed that won consistently, and then running a bunch of regression analysis to see how you got to that. And the teams that have been successful, once again, Tampa Bay, have figured out in their 3-year window, they realize they have about a 3-year window in terms of their the way their salary structure works to maximize a talent cycle before they have to start shedding players. So they figured out how to get the best players in that 3-year period to the top level, develop them in that time period, and then figure out which ones they should sell, which ones they should simply let walk, and which ones they should keep. And they're better at it than everyone else.
Well, we'll address baseball probably in another couple of weeks and see how things have progressed. But gentlemen, we have the passing of a legend. I don't know if how many of you actually got a chance to see him in person or not. Very imposing man. Very imposing man. As you mentioned, Dave, it was actually two icons because we also, not along with the passing of Jim Brown, we also lost Tina Turner.
Yep.
Mr. Scott, I know you're old school, man. You know, start out either. You can start out with Tina, Jim, whichever one you want.
Well, you know, Tina goes back to my younger years and coming from Nutbush, Mississippi, and my folks from Mississippi and Alabama. You know, she's always just seemed like a homegirl. She's always just seemed like just one of the homegirls people I grew up with. And listening to her sing, listening to her. And then Jim Brown, as I've told, I think on a couple of shows, that my dad's cousin was married to a guy named Bill Willis. And Bill played at Ohio State and played for the Browns for many years with Paul Brown. And he was there, I think, just when Jim was a rookie. And but he worked with the Browns for many years after that. He was always around the team. He was always there. And he just would shake his head. I mean, he just said he's bigger than everybody, but he's faster than everybody. So how do you stop that? And he was and Bill Willis, like I say, the guy married to Dad's cousin. I mean, he's All-American, Hall of Famer, played 2 ways with the Browns, and just had nothing but respect for Jim Brown and Marion Motley, who he just said 1A and 1B of 1 and 1A of the best people he'd ever seen.
Dave?
Yeah, I mean, Jim Brown was before his time. You know, he was what was it, 6'2", 232 pounds. And you got to remember the linemen back then, the biggest Steelers lineman, Big Daddy Lipscomb, I think he was like 280, 290, which is considered small today for an interior lineman. John Baker was 279, but the rest of the linemen were anywhere between 230 and 250. 250 was considered a defensive lineman ideal size. And here's Jim Brown, 230 pounds with speed. Franco Harris was 6'2", 230. Just he came in the next generation, but just to give an example, that Jim Brown was just a fantastic player, and he owned the Steelers. That they played 18 times when he was in the league, and I think that they won 12 of the 18 games. And he was just a tremendous player. And then, of course, you know, his athletics. He was an All-American lacrosse player at Syracuse. And I don't know how well you know lacrosse, but that is a running game. It's not like football where it's stop and go, stop and go. You get a break, then you get over to sit on the bench. You're running and running and running in lacrosse, and you really have to have really good cardiovascular system in order to succeed in that game. So for me, Jim Brown, even before he got into the movies, he was something special. I never saw him in person. I've seen clips of him in the past, but I don't think that the clips do him justice because they make him look slow. And if the film clips were adjusted for today's speed, I tell you, he was just before his time, Jim Brown.
Don.
Yeah, so Jim Brown, I haven't shared a little story about Jim Brown. I had a conversation with my dad one time, and it was one of those conversations about old school versus new school, you know, and keep in mind this is back in the early 80s. So nowadays that would be considered old school because we're in, 2023? Anyway, I asked my dad, I said, do you think guys like, you know, Dick Butkus and Jim Brown and Joe Namath could succeed in today's game? And my dad said, Joe Namath wouldn't last, you know, whatever. He said, Butkus, definitely. He said, Jim Brown would still be a star. So my dad had that high regard for Jim Brown, and that just stuck in my head. My dad and I would watch like late night westerns together, and I'll be damned if Jim Brown wasn't in westerns. So that's kind of how much of a Renaissance
100 Rifles, wasn't it? Was it 100 Rifles?
He what?
100 Rifles, wasn't that the movie with?
Yeah, he did some more. He did.
Dirty Dozen. Oh, come on.
Dirty Dozen,
Slaughter, Three the Hard Way. Come on.
He did a
Raquel Welch. Come on, man. Let's
that's 100 Rifles.
Jim Brown was like I mean, I think if he were in today's NFL, I think when his fish career like over 5 yards a carry, I think in today's NFL he would probably have, you know, 4.9 or 5 even. I mean, I think he would still be a star, you know, this is built. And I mean, he was solid muscle, you know, 6'2", 230, playing fullback. You know, it's back in the old days there was a position called fullback. A lot of schools don't have fullbacks anymore unless you're down on the goal line. But, I mean, and this is back before people were, like, lifting weights on a consistent basis. So this guy was just ripped. And you know, he had a great career, great life. And, you know, someone mentioned I go Tina Turner. We lost her. I love Tina Turner. I love that movie. I love that with it. But you know, celebrities always leave us in threes. Y'all know that, right? The other celebrity that we lost was a guy named Ray Stevenson, who was the original Punisher.
Yep.
Irish actor. And there's a great series on HBO called BROOM, and he played the title of the role of Titus Pluto, who was Titus, yeah.
Yeah.
Just kind of this like roguish Roman legionary back during Caesar's time, and he killed that role. So three celebrities, like I said, it comes in threes. Tina Turner, Jim Brown, Ray Stevenson.
Bill.
Well, to put it in perspective, James Nathaniel Brown, originally from St. Simon Island, though he grew up in Manhasset, Long Island, was actually born in the Sea Islands of South Carolina, not far from the Butler Plantation, where the legendary statement or the legendary dictum of 40 acres and a mule was born out of the fact that Mies Butler, the owner of the plantation, had fled and, in fact, lived all throughout the Civil War in Philadelphia, where he owned homes in Philadelphia and was married to a famous British actress named Fanny Kimball. Someday Don and I will do a history podcast together. We'll go into that stuff. But the this young man, James Nathaniel Brown, won 13 high school letters and 10 varsity letters when he got to Syracuse, and could have won more. Because there was essentially a quote-unquote gentleman's agreement in those days about basketball, how many blacks you could have on the team at the time. He was only on the team 2 years because he had to wait for another black player to leave because they already had a guy named Vinnie Coleman and a guy named Manny Breland. And so they couldn't have 3. The limit was 2. So he had to wait for one of them to graduate out of the 12, I guess, total members of the team in basketball. But as was mentioned, he was a 2-time All-American lacrosse player. And in one day, right, he was also on the track team and the basketball team, as I mentioned. But in one day, he finished 5th in the decathlon, right, when he was a national AAU meet in 1954. Then later, while he was at Syracuse, in day mid-May, in fact, right around now, right, a little bit before now, in 1957, he won the high jump in a dual meet against Colgate, won the javelin, placed 2nd in the discus, and then same day, right, goes across to where the lacrosse team is, changes out of his track uniform, puts on his lacrosse uniform, and helps them beat Army, right? An Army team that was nationally ranked during that undefeated year they had in 1957. Another famous player on the team was Ron Luciano, who most of you know as an umpire, who was in those Bud Light commercials where he would wear the thick glasses. But we're talking about one of the singular athletes of all time, one of the greatest all-around athletes of all time. His father was a boxer, and he messed around with boxing. And at one point, I think he was joking, but with Jim Brown, you never know, he challenged a very young Cassius Clay to a match. I guess he would have been Ali, but this was 66. We challenged him to a match. And, Ali laughed it off, but who knows what would have happened. But he was good with his hands. And, of course, ironically, we talked about Tina Turner. Sometimes he used those hands in ways that maybe were not the best. But we're talking about, like I said, one of the singular athletes in the history of this nation. If he had concentrated on any of the other sports, he could have been a professional in almost any of them. He could have been probably an Olympic decathlete if he focused on the decathlon. He could have been a professional basketball player if he focused on basketball. He stopped playing baseball after high school, but they still tell Bo Jackson-esque stories about him as a baseball player in Manhasset. There wasn't much he couldn't do as an athlete. And so when he finally narrowed down to just one sport, when he became a professional, it was unfair. I mean, 104.3 yards per game on average. That's a record. You talk about records that will never be broken. There's a record that'll never be broken. Nobody will even come very close to breaking that. For a career to average 104.3 yards rushing and 5.2 yards per carry for a career, those are forever records. I don't often believe there's records that'll never be broken, but that would be an exception. Those two are records that will never be broken and probably not even approached.
But that match between Muhammad and Jim Brown, it'd almost be like a modern day me against JK3. I think that would be just pay-per-view. That would be a pay-per-view match, I think.
Hey, I'll put a fin down on that.
Mr. Scott, that might be the longest 3 minutes of your life.
You can't bring no knives in there.
No, but you can bring knowledge. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, Mr. Scott, what's your take on LeBron? I take my talents now that he's been swept by the Denver Nuggets, and it says, well, maybe I'll take some time to think about this. What's your thoughts?
Well, I've talked to several people. I was in Atlanta with my cousin, and boy, he just calls and just got such a kick out of Take My Talents losing, being swept. He just thought it was great. But, God, what he's done as an athlete at this stage of the game, boy, it's hard to take anything away from him. Can he keep going at this? I don't know. Basketball is, so I think, he's talked about retirement now, and maybe this could be the time to think about it. He says he wants to play with his son. There's talk about him maybe becoming an owner, kind of following the Michael Jordan script. I don't know what to say. Will he come back again with this same team? They tried to make some trades. They brought in D'Lo, which I never really thought much of. They brought in some other players, but it looks like his championship window, unless he goes somewhere else, is about over.
Bill, what did you think of the way that the Denver Nuggets, even though that last score was 113 to 111, I thought on every level they outplayed the Lakers, especially during their third quarters.
They're just a better team. Sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes there's not much to it. Deeper, better constructed, more cohesive, more coherent, more decisive, better decision making. Pick something. What? Right? What's the only reason that people even gave the Lakers a chance, and they shouldn't have done this, was because of LeBron, right? But I should give credit to the front office. They had a real mess on their hands. They took it from being a team that wouldn't even be very competitive, quite frankly, to a team that at least made it to this point in the playoffs, which would not have happened with the original composition the team had as the season began. But, too little, too late. But there are some bright spots. Lonnie Walker III, is a budding, not maybe superstar is the wrong word, but a budding star. Maybe not superstar, budding star.
Austin Reeves saved the team. Austin Reeves saved the whole day.
Right. That's another player who I think is still on the upswing, still on the ascent, right? So
he got to the phone booth. He just couldn't change costumes
fast enough. No. And they still need another two of him, younger players. Remember what I said about this team? And they did, to their credit, they fixed it. But I said, this team's old. Let's make it older. To their credit, they got rid of some of the really old players. They, had a couple of guys who were deep in their 30s. Still have a few guys deep in their 30s, but they got rid of a couple of them at least and got younger. Got a little bit longer, but I think they still need to add some more length and rim protection and versatility. Obviously, LeBron is a guy who can do almost everything, but they need a guy who's not named LeBron, who has that multiplicative talent, who can, guard 3 or 4 positions, can play 2 or 3 positions at a high level, and can take some of the weight off of LeBron. Because while it's cool to see a man that age do what he did that late in a playoff run, he shouldn't still be doing that. That is essentially fool's gold in a nutshell when you're asking someone who is at his age to do what he's doing. And he's pulling it off because he's LeBron, but that's not a permanent state of affairs, and you shouldn't count on it. So there's still some work to be done by the front office, but I do want to recognize what they did to get to this point, because they would have been a team that wouldn't have won a play-in game, wouldn't have made it to a play-in game based on the original composition of the roster.
Don, what was your thoughts on AD's play throughout the series?
Well, to be honest, I've not been keeping up with basketball at all this year. But when I saw that LeBron got exited from the playoffs, I was a happy man. That should put the end of the Jordan versus LeBron, who's best. I mean, Michael Jordan would not be swept in that way. But no, I'm going to keep up with basketball, but I do read the headlines. I do watch the ESPN highlights, and so I'm liking what Denver did. I think that was a pretty good series for them, and I can't really say I'm a Denver Nugget fan, but they had a coach back in the day named Doug Moe, whose son was actually a friend of my brother's in college. He went to UT, and so in the memory of Doug Moe, go Nuggets.
Mr. Scott, what happened to the Celtics? They've got their way back to Boston. Will there be a game 6 in Miami, or?
That's that's pretty unpredictable. I mean, Boston, they're young. They lost their coach. They lost a lot of their I don't know, what do you want to say, chemistry when the coach and that controversy, there's some young guys. So, but the thing is, I do not trust Jimmy Butler as far as I can see him. I mean, I've seen him through. I don't trust him to win the thing. So I think Boston can get this thing together and get off the mat and actually do this. I wouldn't trust Jimmy Butler as far as I can see him. They have a good coach. I love their coach. They're a great team. But Butler, boy, if that happens, I would be surprised. I think Boston can get up off the mat, but Denver, nobody has an answer for Jokic. Nobody has an answer for him. If 3 guys can be on him, and he'll make a 3-pointer in desperation to go right in. A bad game for Jokic is 20 points, 10 rebounds, 3-4 assists. I mean, and he brings it every day.
You mean 10 or 12 assists?
He comes every day. So, Denver's going to win. Denver's going to win the thing. It's there. I can't see anybody beating them.
Bill, what was your thoughts about the Celtics coming back to at least to a game 5? Do you think there'll be a game 6?
I mean, if they make it to game 6, that's when they get that's when they're shown the door. I just think that mental toughness matters, and whether or not you like Jimmy Butler, he might be one of the most mentally tough basketball players of the past 15 years. And he generally plays his best when his best is needed. And he's one of those guys that people rally around. I mean, we all know the stories of him taking the bottom 4 players off the roster and himself and going against the starters and beating the starters consistently. So when somebody can do that consistently with multiple teams throughout his career, it tells you something about that leadership ability and the ability to raise the level of your play and the play of others around you. So you don't have to like him, and he doesn't care about being liked, as he's made very clear. But he's got something that, frankly, I haven't seen young Mr. Tatum show. And once again, that just unshakable toughness. He's just tougher. And until I see something like that from Tatum, I'm going to, I thought it would be the Heat's, to win it. I said that was the team I would have picked. Well, actually, the team I picked was Milwaukee. But once Milwaukee was eliminated, the team I picked from that point forward was the Heat. And I don't think Boston's going to be able to overcome them.
Yeah, going up against Denver for a number 8 seed is going to be tough. I mean, it was already tough whether they had been a number 1 seed, number 2 seed, but Denver, I think, has kind of established themselves as the team to beat right now. Mr. Scott, one of your favorite people was at the Lakers game, Mr. Kyrie Irving. And as we know, one of the things that Mark Cuban has made quite public is that he's going after AD. So do you think that Kyrie was in there because he wanted to, court the Lakers? Or do you think he was there to court AD to Dallas?
Or was he there to measure the fault and say the earth is flat? I mean, who knows? People like him, the beard, they get you fired. I mean, that's just my opinion about those. They get their bag, they get papered up, and then they get you fired, and they move on. So Kyrie, maybe he's another one I wouldn't touch. I wouldn't waste my time.
Don, any rumors there from Dallas?
I haven't heard any. Like I said, I'm not really, keeping up with what's going on in the NBA. But
well, I know you had a few tidbits from Pop the other week after.
We did. We're still talking about that. There was, I think I mentioned the rumor that the Spurs might be playing the idea of moving to Austin.
Yes.
And they said, well, that rumor has been put to rest. They're not moving to Austin. Not because they don't want to, but it's just not economically feasible because Austin is probably more expensive than Tokyo right now. I mean, one bedroom efficiency going for $2,000 a month. Yeah, that's.
Oh. Do they have a stadium? Do they have a stadium there in Austin?
Oh, they have. Yeah, they just opened the Moody Center on the campus of UT. It seats about 19,000 people. It's a big time venue. It's really helped UT's recruiting. Now, I don't think they would actually play in a college place, maybe temporary, but they'd have to build another one because there's just too much conflict between the college and NBA season. But if they did move to Austin, they would have to go on that rodeo road trip every year, which a lot of teams would have to put up with that. But for some reason, San Antonio does.
Bill, you have any insight into flat Earth thinking?
Insight into flat Earth thinking. Well, that's a sentence. So, he could be there to hope that LeBron fails. Those things are equally. He's one of those people, and there will be fascinating documentaries done on him, right? But he is exactly Mr. Scott and I may not agree on many things, but we definitely agree about Kyrie Irving. He is a tantalizing talent, but I just have trouble feeling like it's worth it. It seems that at some point he's going to do something every year that's going to put your team in a bad position. And now you may, once again, just like Jimmy Butler, but he shows up to work all the time, often the first person there and last to leave. You cannot say the same about flat Earth, right? You cannot say the same about world be flat. I mean, the fact is that every year of the past 6, I think, he's had an extended, I don't know, pick a term, vacation, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. At some point in the year, he misses blocks of games, not a game, not 2 games, blocks of games. And even though he is an absolutely beautiful player to watch, if you just divorce yourself from everything else, but you can't. As a front office, as a coach, as a team, you can't divorce yourself from everything else because you have to take all of him, right? The massive contract, the idiosyncrasies, the whatever the next controversy will be, because there's going to be a next controversy. There's going to be one. Who knows what it'll be, but there's going to be one. You can almost set your watch by it. I would bet everything I own and most of what the rest of you own that something else will happen next year.
You're probably right. You are probably right. To stay on the thing about the some of the movements around the NBA bill. It said that 3 of the last 5 candidates for the Phoenix Suns head coaching job were Frank Vogel, Doc Rivers, and Nick Nurse. Which one of these are you thinking that might be ahead in this trio?
I'm pretty sold on Nick Nurse being the solution of those 3. And they're all fine coaches. They've all had a certain level of success, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to opt for Nick Nurse for multiple reasons. And I think he's probably the best fit for what that organization wants to accomplish, the way they would like to do it.
What's your thoughts there, Mr. Scott? Is Doc is going to get another job this year? What?
He could. I mean, he walked from the last job and got the Philly job the next day. So he's still in a man. And now that he doesn't have to deal with the beard and that kind of foolishness, he's still a good coach. He's won championships. He's a friend. I mean, I think, or he could sit out. I'm sure he's still probably getting paid this year and maybe take a vacation for a while. But he's, I'd love to see him come here to Minnesota, actually. I think that would be a good thing. But, I guess, Nick Nurse, he's been out for a while. He's probably ready to go. And Phoenix, be a good spot. I think that would be good.
I mean, hey, KD, you got to think about it. Anyway, let's see. I think we got just a couple more NBA questions here, real quick.
Well, KD's another one. I don't trust these guys. He's another one that is iffy. Great talent, but very iffy.
Well, we did forget Melo retired after 19 seasons. He's 9th on the all-time scoring list. Mr. Scott, you've seen a lot of Melo.
Yeah. Yeah, they were talking about him coming to the Lakers, and Melo gets his points. Not much else. He gets his points. He's played a long time. He's had a good career. Happy retirement. He gets his points. I mean, he's one of those type of players. I'm going to get mine, and that's kind of how he played, in my opinion. And, I give opinions. It's just like the great coach Denny Green says. The great thing about America is everybody can have an opinion, but it's even greater is you don't have to listen to it. So that's just an opinion.
Bill, what's your opinion?
That's a great question. Yeah, I heard you. And your same question that you just asked James? James.
Mr.
Just
Scott.
asked Mr. Scott.
Yeah. Do you think that there's going to be a softening of the tension between him and the Nuggets? I mean, is there still a little animosity there? I mean, what do you think?
A lot of things soften, right? And then money softens everything, James. You can make a lot of things soften. You can take a rock and turn it into water if you have enough money. So I think that eventually it'll be overcome. Yes, I don't think it's an intractable situation.
All right, well, Dan, there's some new rules, and you were going over them Monday night on your Steeler podcast. So I think the first one that we'll talk about is this new kickoff rule. What's your thoughts on this kickoff rule? The Steelers were one of the 8 teams that voted against it. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, maybe it's just a boomer in me, but I'm not a big fan of it. It's kind of like I think Bill was talking earlier when we were talking baseball. All of a sudden, somebody's on second base, and what did he do? And so now it's like on kickoffs, You catch the ball at the 3-yard line. Now you get a 22-yard advantage, and I'm afraid about the unintended consequences. How are the teams going to react to this? Are they going to start to, like, if it's a close game and they need to really try to hold the team back, or are they now going to squib kick the ball instead of kicking it high and short for a free catch behind the 25? And then so they start squib kicking it more. You may have more injuries. And Dr. Melanie Friedlander, she's a contributor to the Steelers Depot. That's one of the blogs that I contribute to. And she pointed out, and she's a surgeon, on the available information from the NFL in 2022, 99.3% of the kickoffs didn't have an injury. And there were, and this is for 2022, there were 19 concussions involved. And I forget the number of kickoffs that there were for the entire NFL, but there were 19 concussions. Only one of those was a kick returner. And of the 19 concussions, 11 occurred when the returner attempted to return the ball from the end zone. And then somebody during that play suffered a concussion. So it's really like the NFL is claiming that this is for player safety, but the publicly available facts or the publicly available information doesn't back up that claim. And the NFL kind of does have a bad reputation in terms of their veracity at times. So, for me, I mean, there is a concern for player safety. I mean, football is a very, very rough sport, but I think that there might be other ways of addressing it rather than kind of creating this. I mean, why kick the ball off? If you're kicking the ball, if you're a kicker, why even kick it to the end zone? It just to me, it's artificially watering down the product.
Don, what's your thoughts? As Dave said, the league says it's all about player safety, but when you talk about some of the plastics and the polymers that are applied for safety, it seems to me like football players are almost as protected as astronauts these days.
Yeah, I hate the new rule for reasons that were previously stated. I just think that it takes away some of the, excitement, maybe some of the exciting innings we might have in football. I don't know. And maybe I'm just too damn conservative. Maybe I'm just too set in my ways. But I like the old way of handling this. I don't like this. Get the ball in the 25-yard line. It's to me, it's just not. It takes away from the purity of the sport.
Mr. Scott, unfair advantage over the defense?
Well, I have to just give my reference point back to the 1967-68 Washburn State Championship team I played on, where I was the captain of the special teams. And we probably kicked off as many as 6 or 7 times in the game because we were kicking everybody's behind. And so, I'm with Don on this. The new rules are kind of, if you don't want to have a kickoff, well, why do it? I mean, it's just like it's going through emotion. It's going through, and I used to love the kickoffs. I remember Green Bay had this guy, Travis Williams. Oh, man, he was return kickoffs. I mean, that was the most exciting thing in those Packer days. After he came after the great Packer teams. And it was an exciting play, returning kick. Gail Sayers, punt, kickoffs. Even though he's a starting back. This is unheard of today. You would never see a starting back return a kickoff or return a punt, even if it's game on the line type of a thing. So the rule changes are just kind of tough to look at. As I missed the baseball part, I put a man on second I watched the game the other day. Guy took too much long at the plate. He was rung up. Ump rung him up. He said, "What? What?" He didn't know what happened. He was gone. He didn't get a chance to hit. So I think the kickoffs was an exciting part of the game, and part of the reason these people are getting hurt, they don't wear no pads no more. They don't have no hip pads. They don't have no pads on their knees. They don't have no pads on their shoulders. They don't have no pads no more. No protection. So I think all those changes, it's just it's more of a video game type game now, and that's kind of what the new fans want to see: the action, the lights. Taking people to Dave and Buster's to see lights and all that. That's what people want these days. So,
Bill.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about the new rule change.
Oh.
The ball gets anywhere inside the 25-yard line. The ball gets brought out to the 25. Like I said, for a guy that lines up on the defensive side of the ball, man, I mean that's a big advantage.
Yeah, it hurt me a little bit when I heard about this. I heard about it a while back, and then it got implemented. As may have mentioned before, L3, right, on kickoff coverage. I feel like potentially in the kickoff, you're one of the most exciting play by far in the game, and to reduce the number of times we get to all catch our breath and see this improbable thing happen just seems very wrong, like thinking in the exact wrong direction to me.
Dave, another interesting rule change seems to be about this flexing Thursday night football. Can you kind of take us through that one?
Yeah, basically for now teams can have up to 2 Thursday night games. Now what they did is in the original proposal they were talking about with 15 days notice. I think they pushed it back to 28 days notice that they could flex a game. So to bring a game that's scheduled for Sunday, and now all of a sudden it's going to be on Thursday, about 28 days, about 4 weeks before the game is played. Now, I come from the perspective of a season ticket holder for the Steelers. And, sometimes like with my friends, I've made arrangements. One of my buddies, we're going to the home opener together. Well, he's already made hotel reservations. We're in May. And so what could potentially happen to people, they've made hotel reservations, plane reservations. They're getting ready to fly into any city for a Sunday game, a 1:00 game. And then 4 weeks out, all of a sudden, it's going to be played on a Thursday night. So now what happens to their plane reservations? What happens to their hotel reservations? What happens if they took leave from work, in order to adjust their schedule? So I think for the fans that actually attend the games, it stinks. And there's no consideration for fans that attend the games. Now, the problem for the Thursday night games is that, when you schedule them in advance, you may have some teams that you thought were going to be doing well during the season, and then they're not doing well. And there's been a lot of dog games on Thursday nights. But I think part of it is because those games are scheduled well in advance. But I think the other problem for Thursday night games for teams that play on Sunday, well, now there's no opportunity to really to install a game plan for that Thursday game, because your players play. They normally would have a Monday off. That's when the coaches would start installing their game plan for next week. But now the players really only have one day to practice, especially if they have to travel. So there's no time to install a game plan against their opponent that they're playing Thursday. Now it works both ways, but again, it impacts the product. And I think that that's part of the reason why a lot of Thursday night games just aren't good.
Bill, what's your thoughts on the flexing the Thursday night games?
Well, this is once again that divide. For the television viewer, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. Hey, get a better game, probably. For those who are trying to make travel plans, for the teams, it's a little bit of a nightmare because, of how significant this could change certain things, and how little lead time you may have before it ends up happening.
Don, your thoughts? Inconvenience for the fans?
Well, yeah, to a point, it'll inconvenience the fans, but it's been part of the game for now. How long have we been playing Thursday night football? A while. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an adjustment. I mean,
well, you can only get it now if you got Amazon.
What's that?
So you can only get Thursday night football now if you have Amazon.
Well, I didn't. Okay, I learned something. Of course, I have Amazon, so it doesn't mean. I mean,
yes, it's part of the Amazon Prime package. Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about the league and some of the contracts they have with the different media outlets, it should come as no surprise because they're trying to push a product, and Amazon's gonna be running everything eventually. So it's just something I guess we have to deal with.
Dave, who's supposed to carry the playoffs? It's another product, right?
Yeah, I think it's for one of the wild card games. That's going to be streamed, and I can't think of who's doing it, but it'll be for one of the wild card games. So again, what's happening here is that pretty soon there may be certain games where you're going to have to. It'll be almost like pay-per-view for certain games that we're right now, like for the playoffs. Well, those are all you can watch those on regular TV for no added cost.
Mr. Scott, Andy Reid says he wants the owners. He says he doesn't know where the owners are going to stop. He says he hopes that we're not becoming flag football. What's your thoughts on Coach Reid's statement there, Mr. Scott?
Well, I think it's spot on. He's a old-time football guy. He's been around the game a long time. And like I said earlier, no pads, kickoffs. I mean, all these kind of different rules. He's another one. I doubt that he'll coach that much longer. I mean, I think he's won championships. He's done his thing. I mean, I think he's to a point he doesn't have a whole lot more to prove. But I agree with that wholeheartedly. Are we going to change the game that much to where it's – and I think some of it is the money that's involved. People get injured and injuries and have to pay people. And then, then you have people – I used to do work – I was a workers' comp. And we had people that were called malingerers, people that they really weren't hurt that bad, but they knew they could get paid if they sat out and took some doctor's appointments. And so I think that that's kind of what's going on in sports too. We have some malingerers. My foot hurts. I've got a bad foot. My pinky hurts.
Bill, was it malingering a court-martial offense?
It is potentially a Article 15 worthy offense. And I guess the Marine Corps and Navy call that NJP. I guess it's non-judicial punishment. But yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I knew I'd heard that term before. Don, what's your thoughts here on Coach Reid's statement?
Well, I think General Patton slapped malingerers, didn't he? Didn't he do that in Sicily somewhere? I saw the movie.
Well,
No,
they were casualties. I think that was the issue.
yeah, but yeah, I think Reed's got a point. I mean, it's like we're paying more and they're doing less. You know, if you get paid, millions of dollars, you should actually have a little bit of a risk, I guess. But that's the way our society's kind of heading that way. I just read a study that this generation Z or millennial, what do they call it? They have like 40% less testosterone than our generation, and it shows.
Yeah. I'm really surprised James King knew about malingerer. I'm really surprised. He jumped right on that word malingering. I'm really surprised by that.
Well, if you know about the service like that, I mean, malingerers are people that get you killed, and as you can see, I have been around here for quite some time. I'm going to try to be here for a few more. Dave, what's your thoughts on Coach Reed's
Couldn't
statement?
be put no better. Couldn't be put better.
Well, I think with Coach Reed, I understand his sentiment, and I think it was directly involving the rule change with the free catch, on kickoffs. Here's the thing: if the NFL was truly concerned about injuries, they could automatically reduce 5% of injuries by going from a 17-game season to a 16-game season. And right there, you would automatically have a reduction in the injuries. Now, they say that took the place of a preseason game. But honestly, in the preseason game, number one is you're dealing with the 90-man roster. So the players individually are not exposed as much to injury during the preseason. And plus, it's a slower game. So it's not like when they get to the regular season. And I mean, player safety is a real concern. I mean, as a Steeler fan, there was the movie Concussion, which all started out in Pittsburgh, and with the CTE, and that's something that has to be addressed. But I think that there's other ways of doing it. And, rather than eliminating the game. When you guys were talking about the great kickoff returners, I was thinking about Devin Hester, which wasn't that long ago, right? And I mean, most exciting play on the field. So,
Hey, Don, remember White Shoes?
Yes.
Billy White Shoes Johnson,
Billy White
right?
Shoes.
Oh.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was a big part of the game. And then very exciting would be toward the end of the game or at halftime, a team scores and then the other team runs a kickoff back and ties it up. Stadium goes wild. And so I agree with Andy Reid's sentiment, but then I also understand the need to address players' health, and that's a real issue in football as well as in some other sports. But I don't think, like I pointed out, like when Dr. Friedman, Melanie Friedlander, when she pointed out, there really wasn't all that many concussions comparatively on all these kickoffs. And when they were happening, well, the rule change wouldn't have impacted it because they were plays that began in the end zone. So I don't like the rule, and in terms of the hitting now, I don't think it can ever go back. Do you remember Michael Irvin when he used to report? I think it was either Sunday night or Monday night games, and then they would have the biggest hits of the season, and then I mean, you just see people getting laid out. We can't go back to that. I mean, and honestly, that wasn't the way I was taught how to tackle when I was a kid. That was considered the tackles that the NFL developed when I was learning how to play football in the 60s. Those were illegal. They were considered spearing. you had to make an attempt to wrap with your hands. You couldn't just launch yourself helmet first at a player. Where you're hitting them, trying to knock them down like that. And I think that there's things that the league can do to try to address, and they have been doing it, trying to address the injuries without making these changes. That it's going to make it visually, I mean, to me, more boring.
But
I mean, the guy free catches the ball at the 3-yard line, and now instead of the defense having a chance to stop them right there, they get a free 22 yards. It doesn't make sense to me.
but Dave, talking about playing in the '60s, we also played with cardboard helmets and chin straps that were down around.
Right.
I mean, that one bar that by the time you went through 2 or 3 plays, it was down around your chin.
Well, I think it was Joe Paterno that once said that his solution to eliminating concussions was to take away the face mask.
Yeah.
And what his logic was, I played rugby for a long time. Well, in rugby, we make full tackles, but we don't have helmets, we don't have shoulder pads, and so you're really forced to do shoulder tackles. And the thing is you're not going to run into a brick wall if you're not wearing a helmet and shoulder pads. And by with the protection that they have now, well, in the size of the players, and speed of them, I mean, if you have somebody like a TJ Watt smacking you down, or Raquan Smith from over there with Baltimore, I mean, that could be devastating.
Dave, we have a new rugby team out here. I think it's called the San Diego Legion, and a lot of semi-pro and pro lacrosse teams out here. And some of these guys are huge, and they're just coming out of high school. I mean, like you're saying, they're playing without helmets. They're playing, a physical game. And I really thought that football would be more embracing of the rugby tackle. What's your thoughts on that, Don?
Repeat the question.
Did you think that football would be more embracing of the rugby style of tackle due to all the new safety concerns or restrictions put on players? Like Dave says, there's not going to be a top 10 hits of the game.
Yeah, so here's the thing people don't realize about football, and well, some of us do, but your average person, the average sports writer, they don't have a clue. But football is a game in which you have people who weigh 260, 270 pounds running 4.5 40s, and are colliding with people who, are 6 foot, 185 running 4.4 40s. And when they hit, it doesn't matter if you're doing it, leading with your face mask that they used to teach us back in the old days, or if you're doing a rugby style, whatever, you're going to get injured. Physics is not your friend in this game. So, teaching different styles of tackling or emphasizing this or that, your best bet is to, hope that equipment the technology behind the equipment can keep up with the pace of the game. So
You agree?
That's my thoughts.
You agree with Don, Mr. Scott?
Yeah, I do. And I think that, adapting to these rule changes and things are, kind of what all the new games are like. I mean, and, just for example, in basketball, I mean, people like the beard, 6 steps to the basket, no dribbles, and nobody calls anything. I mean, and these type of things have just seem to be so relaxed now. And then in football too, it's like they're trying to counter this stuff within the game action. This is a call. They call a penalty on something. I say, man.
Yeah, I know this is kind of off the subject a little bit, guys, but do we still have rivalries? I mean, everybody's on each other's Twitter, everybody's on each other's social media. A guy gets signed, you all go out to the club together. I mean, are there rivalries anymore?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll just jump in here for a second. I think that the camaraderie aspect, I don't think it takes away from the rivalries. I mean, like AFC North football, and even some of the players that were new to the Steelers and new to the AFC North, they recognize that, hey, this is a different level of competition here. When Pittsburgh plays Baltimore or Cleveland or Cincinnati, I think it can be very competitive. And again, using the rugby example, in rugby, we would play very hard, but at the end of the game, a big part of the rugby was a social aspect where you would host the other team to a dinner, have a keg of beer, and drink with them after the game. Now, the following week, if you played them again, you'd be slugging it out as hard as you could, and then afterwards getting together. So for me, the acts of camaraderie, the prayer circles at the end of games, I don't think that detracts from the level of competition at all. Did we lose you, Jim? Jim looks frozen there. Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I think that Jim just froze off. He'll probably dial right back in.
Got it. Okay.
So anyway, continuing on this discussion, I gave my take. What do you guys think about it? About the acts of camaraderie, the social media between the players. Does that impact the rivalries within the NFL?
Well, I'll jump in. I think sometimes Twitter, and I don't use Twitter a whole lot. I learned my lesson, but I think sometimes Twitter magnifies the rivalry. I mean, there's a lot of trash talking going on, I think it makes some rivalries more intense. I read the back and forth between Texas and OU this past year, and it's ugly. I mean, people friend each other just because they want to show how many people are their friends or whatever. I think having a friend count is huge on that, but there's not trash talking. It's not just sports; it's entertainment, politics. I mean, Twitter is it's an ugly world.
Yeah, and well, to your point, also the interaction between the fans and the players can get pretty salty.
I mean, people have lost their jobs for stuff they put on Twitter. People have been hunted down and assaulted for stuff they put on Twitter. So, I mean, it's different.
Yeah. How about? I'm sorry, Don. How about you, Bill? What do you think about this? The camaraderie versus the rivalry question. Bill.
Yes.
I'm asking you, your take on this camaraderie versus the rivalry question.
Oh, okay. Well, I think a couple of factors have changed it. One is obviously player movement. Good players would commonly spend their entire career with one team. Great players would pretty much universally spend their entire career with one team. And even so-so players would usually spend at least the best part of their careers with one team and might finish up, the last, butt-end year or two or something with some other team. So player movement has played into this. All these players work out together, right? That's something else that doesn't. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that even the major sports weren't full-time jobs. In the off-season, baseball and football players, even good players, maybe not superstars, but all but maybe the top creme de la creme players would have another job. They would, like I said, sell insurance or work for Anheuser-Busch or, work for a school, teach or be assistant principals part-time while their sport was out of season. So that's another thing, is that players group together according to geography or connection to a personal trainer or skills coach that brings them in contact with other players that person works with, regardless of team. And then last but not least, AAU, right? So 7-on-7, AAU, which 7-on-7 is the football version of AAU basketball, bring players together, sometimes across, regional lines, but regardless of where they end up playing, high school, collegiate, or professionally, these players begin to get to know each other as 7-on-7 teammates. And then they go away to college. Sometimes they play together. More often they play, against each other, or they play, but they stay in contact. They still see each other. They, root for each other, things like that. And that kind of thing tends to stay even sometimes years later. So those are things I think that primarily have led to the erosion of the bitterness that you see in rivalries, and makes it more likely that players, we all have seen, players now, they've taken the whole soccer thing of switching jerseys and stuff like that. So yes, it's a much friendlier game to some extent.
Yeah, I think some divisions and the history of some divisions make a difference. The history of the AFC North, the history of the NFC North. So a lot of rich traditions. But like I said, I'm just not sure that we still have that fire. It's still that the old man get off the lawn. So Don Baker says he doesn't care what outside the projections are for 2023. What do you think the projections are for the Bucks this coming season?
Well, they're definitely a team that is going to be in search of itself. They're 3 years removed from being a Super Bowl win, and they have some of the same people there, but they're breaking a new quarterback. They're just attempting a lot of questions. Now, you have to ask yourself: did they feel their needs? Do they get some of those questions answered? Through the draft or through the off season? Time will tell. But I think they're a team that's going to fall, I think, outside the parameters of a playoff contention.
Bill, what's your prediction for the Bucks?
Yeah, I think that they are. I mean, they're trying to avoid a full-on rebuild. This is what they have sort of in common with, our Steelers, is that they're attempting to repair the plane while it's in flight, which is maybe the hardest thing for a front office to do in any sport, is to not have that serious, regression and reboot, which is usually the most common and easiest way to change a roster dramatically. So they had an old team and an expensive team. Once again, hard cap. So old and expensive is not what you want in building a team, James. Just, making sure we establish that. And they needed to shed some of that age and some of that, expense. They've done so. They still probably could move on, and probably still will move on from another player or two to get younger, cheaper. But this is what your goal is. Once you've been a contender, when you're no longer a contender for whatever reason, as quickly as possible, you need to get rid of the bad contracts. Even if they weren't bad, just last year they've gone bad, to get younger and cheaper. And then if the cherry on top is, can you extract out through some of the transactions that you've made additional picks, additional draft picks, which you can use to both rebuild the team, also their currency. You can use those draft picks to bring you back things like players or all kinds of other things, because especially some teams really prize the mystery box aspect of drafting.
Dave, your thoughts about the Bucks?
Well, I think they're going to have a long season. I don't think that they're going to reach. Well, you can't be 500, but I see them as a 7 or 8 win season for them. Quarterback, is Trask the answer? They got Mayfield, and I think Mayfield really got shortchanged in Cleveland, but he proved not to be a franchise quarterback. Now, like Bill just described, that's an opportunity for them because they should have a pretty good. I don't know what their salary cap situation is, but it should be pretty good because they're not paying for a premium quarterback right now. So this is the time to really build in the trenches, to build all the items that you need to create a very strong playoff team. But I don't think that this year is it for them. I'm looking at a 7 or 8 wins for them. I might be wrong. I don't follow them very closely, but I will note that they still have Bruce Arians. He had been with the Steelers. They still have like 3 coaches with Steeler or Pittsburgh ties on the team: Tom Moore, Larry Foote, and Nick Rapone. So, but that's not going to help them win. You have to have the players, right? And to me, the football's become a very quarterback centric league. Do they have the quarterback to take them to the playoffs? I don't see it right now.
Dave, Ken Sterner wants to know, what are your thoughts on the Steelers signing Marcus Golden?
Oh, that is it's filling a big need. Right now the Steelers they got TJ Watt and they have Alex Highsmith on the edge, but we saw what happened whenever TJ Watt got hurt. I mean, the defense really, really suffered. They did not have a good number 3 edge to come in. Now they did draft Herbig and Nick Herbig, but then the question with him is does he have the size? He's like 240, and he's a player out of Wisconsin that can play the inside and the outside. Marcus Golden, 9-year veteran, a little bit older, but as recently as 2021, he had 11 sacks. And I think maybe what's more important here is that he recognizes his role, because a couple years ago, the Steelers brought in Melvin Ingram. And then what happened is Ingram became discontented because he wanted to start over Highsmith. And then he ended up going to Kansas City, saying he wasn't getting enough snaps. So I'm hoping that Marcus Golden is a good fit. He's not perfect. Jonathan Heitritter from Steelers Depot, he did a film study on Marcus Golden. He has some good strengths in terms of setting the edge. He can rush. One of the disadvantages is he has a short arm span, like 31 and 16th arm length, which is pretty short. And so then that enables offensive linemen to use their leverage to knock him out of the way. But I think overall, I think his strengths outweigh his weaknesses, and it's something that the Steelers really needed.
Yeah, I thought it was a good sign too. Bill, what did you think about the addition of Golden?
I do like it, and this is what, once again, Stormy Brothers for. But this is when traditionally, like the Swallows returning to San Juan Capistrano, there always is the scooping up of the lower priced value veterans, the cutout bin veterans, or pick a term, by the Steelers front office. I still like to see them continue to do some work. But Marcus Golden was for at least the heart of his career, was a consistently good, productive pass rusher who now is on the back half and, has lost something, but he's still, I think, a worthwhile player to have.
Don, According to NFL.com, these are the 10 most complete teams. Do you agree? Number 1, the Eagles. Number 2, the Chiefs. Number 3, the 49ers. Number 4, the Bungles. Number 5, the Cowgirls. Number 6, the Bills. Number 7, the Ratbirds. Number 8, the Prop Jets. Number 9, the Seahawks. Number 10, the Chargers. Do these teams make your top 10, Don?
Well, the Chiefs. I mean, Super Bowl. Yeah, the Chiefs are definitely a complete team. I thought the Eagles there also. 49ers are close. I don't know how the Cowboys got on that list. They're not even in the top 20. I think the Bills. I moved the Bills ahead of the Cowboys. Seahawks, no. The Jets might be better this year, but of those teams, the ones that stand out are the Chiefs, the Eagles, and 49ers. The rest of them, well, let's back up. What's the definition of complete? To me, complete means, you're going to win, 11 or 12 games in the season. So I think in that category, you have the Eagles, Chiefs, with the 49ers and Bills on the inside looking out. Cowboys, we'll see. I have no faith in the Cowboys right now.
Bill,
Yes.
what's your do you think that these are the 10 most complete teams, or would you do a little addition and subtraction?
I might do a little addition and subtraction, but we're basing this off of last year, I assume.
Yes.
Because there'll be some things that will change. I think the Eagles are perhaps the most complete team. I mean, they have depth. They have top-tier talent on both sides of the ball at every level, right? They have maybe not great, but very good running backs. They have maybe one of the most impressive groups of wide receivers in the NFL, if not the number one, certainly in the top 3 or 4. Their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, has pushed himself, from the 20s in terms of people's thought processes among top quarterbacks to, I would think, at least the top 8 or 9, and deservedly, I would say. They have a good pass rush. They have a good secondary. They can run the ball. They can stop the run. I mean, it's hard to find. I mean, obviously, it helps if you have Pat Mahomes. Patrick LeBron Mahomes, helps clean you up from a multitude of failures. But they have a lot of talent on the team, that they can throw at you in every different direction, every kind of way that they can use them. So I think they're one of the most impressive teams I've seen in multiple years. And then once you get past sort of an obvious player like that, there's – I mean, Buffalo is certainly in a top 4 team in my mind.
So if Buffalo's a top 4 team, would you move the Bungles or the 49ers?
That's the tough one, right? I think the 49ers are probably a top 5 team, and then I would move probably the Bengals out. Not because they're not good, but because sort of like Kansas City, so they do a lot of things that are very quarterback dependent. And so he covers up some things for them. I mean, quick, name their tight ends. I sadly can name them, but they're not good players. I'm an obsessive. That's the only reason I can name them. These are guys that would be, backups or whatever in a better situation. So not an ideal situation at some positions. And their offensive line still needs work. But he makes some things go for them, covers up some things for them. The loss of Jesse Bates is going to hurt that secondary also. But, more than people realize. People undersell what safeties do for defenses. Just one last thing. There's never been a great defense in the history of the NFL that didn't have very good to great safety play. At some point, having safeties, at least one that's really good, but preferably two, that are able to both help you in the run game and the pass game, give your defensive play caller so much more freedom. They slip the cuffs from off of his wrist and allow him to call more things and do more things. But I would push the 49ers above them just because I think they have better depth of talent at more positions.
Dave, what's your thoughts on this? Two of these teams are in our division.
Yeah. Well, with those two teams, with the Bengals, I think that they should be right up there. Probably 4 or 5 is where they're at. I mean, Joe Burrow, the receivers that he has, but as Bill just mentioned, the loss of the safeties. That they've got to replace that, or they're going to be in trouble. So you can't really say that they're complete until they demonstrate that, hey, they've replaced Jesse Bates. But I think that that's easier said than done. In terms of the Ravens, they made that they really made the trade for last year for Roquan Smith, from the Bears. They got a couple great linebackers inside. But the big thing is getting Lamar Jackson back. And now they got OBJ. They drafted a wide receiver. So now they have some weapons where if you fill the box on the Ravens, you're going to have a receiver down the field that now Lamar can stop and pass down the field. And I think that, a lot of people discount his passing ability, and actually his statistics are not bad. If you go to the Pro Football Reference and you look at the advanced passing statistics, he has pretty good accuracy, on target throws as opposed to bad throws. He really actually has better statistics than I would have anticipated. So the Raven, I would put the Ravens probably up above the Cowboys. I'm not sure why they're there. I think that they're an unproven team, frankly. The Bills are going to be tough. It's a pretty good list. But I right now, I think the Eagles and the Chiefs. What were the significant pieces that they lost? And how did they compensate for them? And right now, I think that they're as strong, if not stronger, than they were last year.
Well, hey, all we can do now is kind of wait and see. But yeah, you have to put the Eagles and Chiefs 1, 2, whether you want, however you want to interchange them. I had the Chiefs number 1, Eagles number 2. Chiefs beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, so I can't put the Eagles above the Chiefs. But Don, the Chargers, they signed Austin Eckler to a contract extension with 1.75 million in incentives. Eckler is due to make about $6 million base salary in 23. Don, were you surprised that there was no market for the Chargers, RB?
Well, here's the thing: when you're talking about contracts that are full of incentives, I actually like that as opposed to the guaranteed money, because to me that tells me that they're going to take they're taking a gamble somewhat, but I think that Austin Eckler is like he's like a diamond in the rough. I don't think he gets the amount of respect I think he's due, and maybe that's just you're coming from a smaller school. I don't know, but I think he's a hell of a player, and I like the fact that they're going to stay with him, and provide him an opportunity to make more money beyond the base as far as that goes. So I think it's a good move for everyone involved. The Chargers keep a pretty good little running back, and he gets to stay around familiar territory. He's only been in the league. How long has Eckler been in the league? Like 3 years.
Is it 3 or 4?
Yeah, so he's still young. So he may not be like the marquee player that some of the bigger names are, but he's a scrappy little guy. I like him.
Bill, what's your thoughts on Eckler?
So since we hit on some nicknames earlier, we had World B Flat and Takes My Talents. His nickname is Pound for Pound because pound for pound he's the strongest player in the league. This is a guy who, at his size, has squatted 665. He is a legendary weight room player from Western, right, in Colorado. Was a 2-time all-conference, two-time running back, and then you throw into that he had been a return specialist, so 3-time all-conference if you count his sophomore year when he was return specialist, all-conference in the RMAC, the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. I was one of the people that was a big fan of his coming out of college, and I couldn't get too many other people to talk about him. I was kind of alone carrying the banner for him when he was coming out of college. It was an enormous bargain when they got him as an undrafted free agent. He should have been drafted. Incredibly productive. And I remember when I wrote him up, I said he's a stronger, faster Danny Woodhead. Is what I wrote about him. When Danny Woodhead, also a Division II All-American, in his day coming out of Chadron State. But I love him. I'm an enormous fan of Austin Eckler's, and I kind of hoped he would hit the open market. I would have loved him as a 1-2 punch in Pittsburgh, but he's a great, 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 great player. And as was pointed out, sort of still somewhat underrated. He's 28 years old, which, while it isn't super young for a running back, he does, and he's had some injuries, but he does a pretty good job of rehabbing and maintaining his body. And I think it's a good deal, as mentioned, but for all concerned.
Dave, were you surprised there wasn't a market for Eckler?
Well, I think that the issue for the running back position is it's kind of become fungible, where I think that teams kind of value running backs that are on their rookie contract. And in the old days, it was, hey, when a running back hits 30, not very many of them can perform past 30. Of course, there were the exceptions to that rule. Bill pointed out, he's going to be 28 this season. He's had a few injuries. But apparently, we'll see. I think that the running back position has become more fungible in terms of, and I mean replaceable by saying that. But hey, if he can perform the way he's been performing, if he keeps himself in good condition, then I think that his team is going to be very happy. And for the Steelers, looking at it from the Pittsburgh perspective, well, they needed another running back. Now, the thing is would he accept that role playing behind a Najee Harris? That's the question. Because Pittsburgh has Najee, they got Jaylen Warren, and now, who else is going to fill out that room? But I think it's going to be interesting. It wasn't that long ago that the running back was almost neck and neck with receivers in terms of how important they were. Sean Alexander, LaDainian Tomlinson, players like that were like marquee players, and for a sustained period. And now it's kind of like, hey, are you going to sign them after their rookie contract is up?
Don, Yahoo Sports says there are 5 unsigned free agents who can still help a team win. Number 1 on that list was Zeke. Number 2 was Kenny Galladay, wide receiver. Number 3 was Leonard Floyd, the edge rusher. Number 4 was Matt Ioannidis, defensive lineman. And number 5 was Mercedes Lewis, tight end. Don, which of these do you think will be the first signed?
Well, I think the first one signed, I think, will be Zeke. Now, he is not, he's not the spring chicken once was, but he still has he has probably 3 or 4 more good years in him. He is deadly around the goal line. So I think a team will take him. I'm not sure who, but I think he has an upside that teams are looking for. He can catch the ball in the backfield, for example. He is, like I said, tough, inside the 20. He's seen his better days, but I mean, he's still a threat when he gets the ball. So any team I think could use him. Just top of my head, I'm thinking the New Orleans Saints. I could see Zeke in the Saints uniform easily.
Okay. Bill, what do you think about these 5 guys, and who do you think will be the first signed?
Well, I mean, I like Frank Clark better than Leonard Floyd, but I guess we're sticking to and I'll take Ndakwe over either one of those guys, actually. But the ones that you restricted it to, you mentioned Matt Ioannidis, who is 29. You mentioned, who else did you mention?
Mercedes Lewis.
Yeah, Mercedes Lewis, who's 39, I think. Who else did you mention?
Kenny Galladay.
Galladay.
And, of course, Zeke.
Probably Matt Ioannidis. Probably because he's the easiest deal to get done. That's what probably determine who's going to be the first of that list. Is probably the easiest deal to complete. The others are going to be a little more complicated. Somebody you didn't mention, but watch for him to be snapped up by somebody, particularly somebody who needs a player in the secondary who can play multiple positions. Bryce Callahan, who can play corner, can play nickel, and maybe even free safety in a pinch, is a guy that's out there. I think is going to draw some attention. I think there's some teams still interested in him. Somebody's going to reach out and touch Kenyon Drake and Myles Gaskin amongst the running backs. They're cheaper than Zeke, much cheaper than Zeke. Galladay is going to find a home pretty quickly too. And somebody you didn't mention was Dalton Reisner. He's another guy that I think is going to find a home pretty quickly. And some of those are going to take a while, though. I'm interested in Kareem Hunt. That's another one that really intrigues me.
Dave, they got a response from you.
Well, with the 5 guys that you had listed, I would eliminate one, and that's Mercedes Lewis. He's 38. I mean, he's now with the other 4. I think it really depends on most of the teams. Pittsburgh's an exception, but most of the teams have their 90-man rosters. They're into the OTAs. We're going to start to see some injuries, soft tissue injuries, and stuff like this. And between now and the beginning of training camp, I think a lot of it goes to, hey, does a player go down, and what's the team's need? Because as good as they are, if they don't need that particular skill set, they're going to go unsigned at this point. And so I think a lot of it has to do. I would keep my eye around the league as to what happens during the OTAs, because although that's non-contact, kind of very light, a lot of times you get these soft tissue, hamstring goes or something like that, soft tissue injury that can linger. Now all of a sudden the team needs to replace a player. And it could be a running back, could be a wide receiver.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Right. But Don, your final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Well, again, good to be. I was actually able to stay for the entire show this week.
Did I hear Ranger earlier?
You did. You did.
Okay.
He's. I hate to say it, but I think my dog has developed dementia. He's 10 years old, and he's just not the same dog he was. I still love him. He's still my boy, but it's sad when dogs get old.
CBDs, Don. CBDs.
Yeah. Get that dog stoned, right? Yeah. Get me stoned. So final thought. So not sports related, but by the next time we have the show, Memorial Day will have come. And I remember a few years ago, James being in Washington, D.C., and you sent me some names to for the Vietnam Memorial, that the guys that you served with and lost. And so I think, Monday will be a time for reflection. I don't care about Memorial Day sales or anything, used car lots, whatever. To me, it's about just taking time to reflect and think guys like you and Bill who served. And so that's just my final thoughts. Hopefully y'all are doing well with everything that you've experienced, and you think about the people you lost, and what a great country we live in, guys. We hear about everything that's wrong with our country, but like Ronald Reagan said, we are still the last hope of the world, pretty much. If we lose our freedom here, there's nowhere else to go. So God bless America, and God bless you guys, and thanks for all you did.
Appreciate that, Don. Dave.
Yeah, I really appreciate Don's comments. I noticed that Bill Carroll has an 11 Bush handle there. Appreciate your service, all of your guys' service. I'm thinking about the way we started, Jim Brown and Tina Turner. And, Jim Brown, what a wonderful player, a wonderful actor, and an activist. I'm not going to say I agreed with everything, that he wanted to represent, but the point is that he had things that he believed in, and he followed through on those. And that's what everybody should be able to do. And that's part of what our country allows for. And I truly appreciate that from Jim Brown. For Tina, proud Tina, man, she's rolling on down to the river. And loved her music, loved her passion, and along with everybody else that we can't share time with, God bless.
Well, Bill, your final thoughts for the evening.
So, one of the people that I sort of tied together with James Nathaniel Brown was Jack Johnson, who in an era where lynching was rampant, lived the way he lived, right? What an incredibly courageous, almost foolhardy man he was. And he was, of course, convicted of violating the Mann Act, which, of course, is to take a woman across state lines for immoral purposes. And he eventually fled the United States, lived in France for quite some time due to that conviction in absentia. And on this day in 2018, Donald John Trump, the 45th president of the United States, pardoned him, posthumously, obviously, for that conviction. And when I think about James Nathaniel Brown, another inexorable way in which he and Tina Turner are tied together is, unfortunately, a connection with and experience with domestic violence, obviously in very different ways. One person on one end of it, the other on the other. And James Nathaniel Brown would often say, like when being questioned by police, he would admit, I slapped her. I slapped her. And I know it was a different time. Obviously, it was a different time. And
Off the 10th story, though, Bill, I mean, it could have got a little closer to the ground, like maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
It didn't have to always be the roof.
Right. Yes, I know. Understood. He was a person who lived also unapologetically, even though he probably should have apologized to some people. And when you confronted James Nathaniel Brown, you better be ready to fight, sometimes literally. He is a person that walked away from the NFL a year or two earlier than he could have continued to dominate. He clearly had another couple of years of utter dominance left in him. And as was mentioned before, he was a little over 6'2". I think when he was officially measured, I think he came in at something like 6'2.5", and played most of his career between 228 and 235, but about 232 most of it. He dropped weight in 60 or 61 because he was the fastest player on the team until Bobby Mitchell got there. And Bobby Mitchell, of course, had been a hurdles champion in the Big Ten. And so the first time in his life when they did their conditioning sprints, and obviously, as has been talked about, the first team to time you in the 40 was the Browns. And that's why we have the 40-yard dash, because of Paul Brown. And so the first time someone beat him, and so he comes in the next year about 7 or 8 pounds lighter and been working out with his old track coach. And he races Bobby Mitchell, loses, but he keeps racing him until officially it's declared a tie and he can stop. Bobby Mitchell, depending on who you ask, says, I officially realized I have to, let this man either win or tie, or he'd never stop racing me. He was one of those people like Michael Jeffrey Jordan and a short list of others who would compete until one of you died. He didn't care which, probably. And we won't see his like again. We won't. There won't be another him, right? That they don't make him like that anymore. There will never be another one of him. Though he was a person that I very much looked up to, as was mentioned, I don't agree. I mean, his politics weren't an issue for me. I don't agree with the things he did too, and the way he handled women. And because I know it was a different time, but he definitely handled sometimes literally women. And I hope that as we remember and lionize him, that we don't gloss over or overlook the fact that he had flaws. And so for Annie Mae Bullock, who went under her, stage name and legally changed her name, in fact, to Tina Turner. She, had her life at risk at times due to domestic violence. I want us not to gloss over that because one is it's one of those silent epidemics within our culture. And because abused people, not just women, I mean, obviously women more often than men, but there are abused men as well in relationships, become absolute experts in hiding what's happening to them, right? I mean, espionage, counter-espionage level hiding at what's going on with them. We often don't see it, even within our own families sometimes. But I do want to recognize how pervasive and powerful domestic violence has been in this nation. And my hope, like I said, is while I very much admired James Nathaniel Brown, this is something I could never countenance and never will. So I can embrace everything else or many of the other things about this man, but I'm always going to call that out.
Well, thank you for your final thoughts. My final thoughts this week, I know everyone is looking forward to Monday, celebrations with your family, barbecues and whatnot. But as Don so aptly pointed out, there's a whole generation that we owe our thanks to. As I put up on my Facebook page, I'm not a hero, but I served with a lot of them.
Yes, sir.
Have a great weekend, guys. Talk to you next week.
All right. Take care.